Welcome to the After Dark podcast with Anthony James and Konrad. Make sure to subscribe so you don't miss an episode.
Hello, and welcome to the After Dark podcast. I'm Anthony James, and that's Konrad.
Hello.
That's him.
New season, new rules.
Yeah, how long have you been planning that one for?
Yeah, that came into my head about 5 seconds ago, to be honest. I went with it. I've gone with
All
it.
right, okay, so that's a perfect segue into us talking about, you might have noticed that Konrad has a new microphone.
Woo!
Come on, Konrad, show it off.
Welcome to Radio Dark.
So basically...
Can't do it. I haven't got a radio voice. I wish I did.
So basically, we're hoping that it'll be a much more consistent sound from Konrad. Konrad's been actually using his headset mic till now.
Yeah,
We were keeping
like a
that
pro
a secret.
gamer.
Yeah, we were keeping that a secret, but we've been able to procure him a microphone. We're still waiting. I've also ordered myself one. We have got, I think it's a lovely Rode NT. Is that
Yep, that's the fella. Yeah.
So it's we're gonna have a lot more consistent sound. You know, as he says, it's a new series. We needed to have new sounds, but so we're hoping. So let us know what you think of Konrad's levels and how he gets on in this episode. We're thinking it sounds great. You can tell by the low dulcet tones there. It sounded great. Sounded great to me.
Those low lows and high highs in this Rode TM. By the way, Rode, if you do want advertising space, we are open to the possibility.
Yeah,
Rode TM microphone, yeah.
And I'm getting the same microphone next week.
Yeah.
Because in Northern Ireland, apparently it takes literally 17 hours to get to Konrad, where he lives, and it takes about 3 days to get to me.
Listen, it's the benefit of living in the cultural mecca of England where I live.
Well, we haven't even went through a no-deal Brexit yet, and
That's true.
All that stuff hasn't even hit the can yet, and I still can't get it in one day. Well, that's just fine. But what we wanted to say thank you very much to a specific 4 people, because without their help, we couldn't have got these microphones. Now, we weren't advertising this whatsoever, but the fact is, on the podcast, you can actually tip us. Would you believe? If you like what you're hearing and you want to contribute a little to the podcast, what we can promise is if you contribute anything to the podcast, it will go back into making the podcast better quality. Both Konrad and I, we have jobs. We're not looking to line our pockets here. If you could throw us anything at all, we'd be much appreciated, and it will go back into the podcast. Having said that, we're not begging you. Keep your money, give it to a charity if you want to. So basically, we have to say thank you to 4 people whose tips really helped us out. And the tip link is in the description as well. And it's also in the description of the audio podcast. That's where they found it. So these 4 people searched out to give us money, Konrad.
Yeah, it's unbelievable. I mean, obviously, thank you to everyone for listening, and we get some like income from the ad revenue, but to actually go out of your way to tip us like directly is amazing, and I can't believe people actually did that. To be honest, it's unreal.
Yeah, it is unreal, and like Konrad and I always say to each other when we're talking off air and stuff, we always say we can't believe people are even listening to us.
Yeah, definitely.
So let alone people taking their hard-earned money and giving it to us. It's just that's just a whole other thing. So the 4 people are now. It's actually email addresses. So I'm not gonna say the whole thing. Okay, I'm just gonna say sort of one name out of it. Okay, does that make sense?
Yeah, sure. That'll be fine.
Yeah.
It'll be fine.
There's only 4 of them. So if you're listening, like I'm sure these 4 people are listening. You know who you are. Okay. So thank you very much to E.T. I'll say that. E.T.
Nice.
Thank you very much to Butiska.
Ooh.
Thank you very much to Thomas K. I'll say that. Thomas K. And thank you very much to, now this person is always commenting in the comments. So if you see him, give a big thanks from us. Rennie. I'll say Rennie. I'm not saying say the rest, but I think a lot of people who are in the comments having chats down there, you'll know who it is. So thank you very much to those 4. We are blown away. I think the next thing we need to procure for the podcast would be a quality webcam for Konrad, so we can get his ugly mug on the screen.
Yeah, just like ruin everyone's viewing experience.
Exactly. Yeah. So thank you very much. Right. So subscribe on podcasting apps. if you haven't already. It does a huge favor. We're loving the numbers going up and up and up. It's great. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. And apart from that, I think we're just ready to get into this banger of an episode. What do you think, Konrad?
Yeah, let's do it.
Oh, let's break it down.
So the episode opens with a quote from Friedrich Nietzsche, and it says, "And if you gaze long into the abyss also gazes into you."
Yes. Yep. I remember I first came across this quote when I was reading the graphic novel The Watchmen back in, I don't even know when, like 2003 or something, but it's a very good quote. I like it a lot.
Yeah, I read at least half of that. I'm pretty sure I finished the whole thing, but it's one of those things where I read it around the same time the film came out, so I can't actually picture the differences in my mind. You know what I mean?
Do you, when you think of the ending, do you think of a giant squid attacking New York or a nuke going off that everyone blames Dr. Manhattan for?
Nuke.
Okay, yeah. So there you go. You've got the movie influence.
Yeah. Okay. I thought that would happen. Okay. So yeah. So Nietzsche. Any thoughts? How? Well, actually, just answer this maybe with one word if you want. Did you see themes of this of this quote from Nietzsche in this episode yet? They do like to start off season. It seems like they start off each season with a quote from someone. Because they started off season 1 with a quote too, but I can't quite remember. I think it was an Einstein quote. I can't quite remember.
I think it was an Einstein quote. Yeah, I think to be honest, with this quote, the way I normally read this is that the longer you spend interacting with the darker side of anything, the more your character will become colored by those interactions, and the darker you will become as an individual, which I guess kind of is thematically appropriate for Dark as a series. Is it appropriate for this episode specifically? I don't know. I felt like, to me, there was more themes relating to the episode title than to this quote that really stood out to me in this episode. But I think as a general kind of lens through which to view the series of Dark, this Nietzsche quote it's certainly appropriate.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so then the first scene we get is probably something which you didn't think we were going to get this early. We actually see them building the tunnel.
Bloody 1921.
1921, yeah. And I also it's something that second seasons of TV shows generally. I think it's it's a very common strategy for the writing that they give you new characters at the very beginning of season 2.
Yeah.
So it's something that's very common. But in this scene, they're digging the tunnel. There's 2 males. One is an older, sort of middle-aged one. One's quite a young fella, and they're digging the tunnel. Then they go out for a rest. We hear them sort of recanting Sigmundus Creatus Est. And then what happens is it's revealed that the blonde one is Noah.
Yep.
And then he kills the other guy.
Yeah. So, and we also, in this opening, so I'll reveal this little tidbit now. I have a big old theory coming out of this episode, and part of it is the identity of the older gentleman who is killed here, or that leads into the bigger theory. So these guys kind of talking about how the beginning and end are kind of the same thing, and that this sort of paradoxical idea of this loop that shouldn't work but does somehow is kind of prevalent throughout this episode, which perhaps unsurprising given the episode title. But yeah, the introduction of a young Noah is very exciting. The introduction of a new timeline in 1921, and also the mention of the name Adam, which And to be honest, there's a lot in this opening, because they also talk about it's 6 days until paradise begins and hell on earth ends. So we know the 27th of June, something's going to happen.
It cuts to older Noah as well.
Yeah,
his little book, and I think we see inside the book for the first time, and it says beginning of the last cycle.
Yeah, which I am fascinated to know how many cycles there are. If the 2019 to 2020 kind of stretch is the last cycle, how many have come before that? Basically, is 1921 the first one? I guess it seems like it might be, given that's where young Noah is, but it's all up in the air at the moment.
Yeah, it's interesting. The idea of the cycle it's hard to know what they mean. Like, do they mean a literal cycle of time, or do they mean like the cycle of events? Like, for example, one particular cycle would be the idea of Mikkel going back in time, turning into Michael. Like that's a cycle
Yeah,
of events.
I think in my head that's more what I thought it meant. Like there's a stretch of time between 2019 and 2020 where no one is kind of actively messing with the timeline, and then there's a sort of stretch of 9 days, or 6 days in this case, where someone goes back in time and starts a cycle within that timeline where there's some deterministic hijinks going on. That's kind of my read of that. So I'm interested to see who it is.
So your idea is that like the cycle refers to the period of time in which a passage or something is open.
Yeah, basically.
Okay, cool. Awesome. So then we get the opening credits. Then we get a scene with a young Marta and a young Jonas.
Yeah.
They're seeming to enjoy each other's company, we'll say.
Yeah, it's a sex dream that turns out to be a nightmare, which, to be fair, we've all been there, Jonas. Don't worry about it.
We just weren't all in the position to be in the same age group of the relative. But anyway, so Jonas wakes up from like a nightmare, sort of bringing back the feelings of early in the first season, actually, when he was waking up from the nightmares. I also noticed that there was parallels in this opening sequence here with Jonas between the first episode opening up and this, in terms of like, in the first episode we had Ulrich and Hannah going at it. We sort of get the similar thing here. It starts off like that, and then Jonas comes downstairs. It focuses on the photograph of the family. There was definitely echoes of the first season. Obviously, at this point, we're in a completely different space in terms of the story.
Oh, sure, yeah, but I mean, I think the Jonas dream sequence to Jonas waking up is a tried and tested kind of opening to an episode, or I guess not opening, but opening to a scene at this stage.
Yeah, it's classic. It's classic Dark at this point. But then we get a fantastic sequence of Jonas sort of going about his errands in a way in this post-apocalyptic world. And I can say that as not a spoiler, because now that it says the apocalypse is happening soon. So in this post-apocalyptic world, Jonas is going around sort of collecting things. It seems there's like lovely, beautiful shots of him like in the school, and all the like the basketball court, all of the wood is rippled. And one thing about this scene that really got me is that it's so quiet. It's eerily quiet.
Yeah, it's so. I mean, I have a lot to say about this stretch, but I think the realization of the post-apocalyptic world here, which I should full disclosure, the Netflix episode description for this does state that Jonas wakes up in 2052, which I thought isn't actually confirmed anywhere in this episode, which is a bit like, oh, okay, fine, well, that's that confirmed then. But
it's literally just before you clicked on the episode, it said 2052.
Yeah, so when you like, you select which episode you want to watch, and it says like X does this and whatever, it's like 2 sentences, and in that it says Jonas wakes up in 2052 and has to do something, which I was a bit like, I don't think they've confirmed that at any point in this episode, so that feels like a bit of a spoiler, Netflix. But yeah, so this realization of the sort of post-apocalyptic 2050s is incredibly believable. It's really it reminds me a lot, it's funny to return to this actually, it reminds me a lot of 80s movies that are set in kind of dystopian futures, when the reason they would set them in sort of post-apocalyptic or dystopian futures is because making them was cheaper, because you could find like burnt out factories or whatever and be like, oh, it's a post-apocalyptic future.
And there is a couple of those, isn't there?
Yeah, and this feels like a bit of a callback to that. It probably wasn't done for budgetary reasons, but it's incredibly smart to do it, because you don't have to, create some sprawling cityscape, filled with flying cars. You just have this kind of burnt out world, and it's fantastic. And the sort of ambient score in this episode is great in all of Dark, but this sort of like pulsing synth, and what sounds like almost kind of like alien animal calls, like it almost feels kind of like 50s sci-fi, obviously not with the synth added on top of it. It's amazing.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I have everything good to say about the sequence. It's so different as well, I found, to the rest of Dark, in that there's no dialogue. Like, Dark is a very dialogue-driven show, obviously, except for the montage sections. But the slow, eerie, silent, with all those, with that synthy sort of soundtrack happening too, as you say.
Yeah.
It's just so compelling, and it gives you a completely different feeling straight away into season 2. It's like,
you feel like you're in the future.
You feel like you're in the future, exactly, and you feel like Jonas is completely out of his element in a way.
Yeah.
Which is great.
I have some questions. I'm not looking for answers to them, but I might pose them here just because.
Okay, that's no fine problem.
Because we can maybe return to them later. But so my big thoughts coming out of this sequence were, well, threefold. So first, Claudia talking about the apocalypse on the 27th of June 2020, which is
on the cassette machine. Yeah,
on the cassette, and talking about the God particle, which I think we'll find out what that is a bit later. But this isn't really a question, more of a statement, but the thing that struck me about that was, and I didn't vocalize this at the time, but my expectation at the end of season 1 was that older Jonas setting off the time machine in the wormhole was the thing that was going to cause the sort of nuclear disaster that would lead to the apocalypse that we'd kind of seen glimpses of. So then when I found out that the sort of 2019 timeline was going to continue on for another year, I was really surprised by that, actually. So that was a nice surprise, because I didn't expect to see many of those characters again, or certainly not in the same capacity that we saw them in season 1.
So what are your questions?
Well, okay, so I've got 2 questions. One, and this is just going.
It sounded really dismissive. So what are your questions?
So the significance of that necklace on Marta's photo, that seems interesting to me. I haven't spotted that anywhere yet. And the big one is, what are those cocoons? Because they're everywhere in this episode, and they look like massive wasps' nests. They're horrible.
Yeah, I don't know what they are. Is it something it's like a growth on a tree that can happen with nuclear?
Well, they're everywhere though. They're like in houses and stuff. They are horrific, whatever they are.
They really add to this. It makes it like almost adds like a scary like terror aspect to the world.
Yeah, like I was literally. I will get to it at the end. There's a theory I want to propose, which is one of the ones I don't really believe, but I think it's quite funny. But
awesome.
There was genuinely a part of my head that was like, is this going to turn into sort of like a body horror? Like creature feature sci-fi thing with like giant wasp monsters. But even if they're just set dressing, they are horrible and they're everywhere, and it's really, really cool. I don't know who came up with that idea, but they're a genius.
Yeah, it's like really sort of unlike something you've seen before. Yeah, it's cool. Yeah, I agree. It's great. Okay, so then we get the sort of what sort of takes the place of the episode title card. Of this episode, we get 21st of June 2020, 6 days until the apocalypse.
Yep, which is a pretty profound way to introduce a scene.
It is, yes. And one thing, so Konrad, you were saying this before we started recording, that you were a bit taken aback by the fact there was no title card for the episode this time.
I know. No opportunity to flex my bad German.
Yeah, so it's actually, this episode's called Beginnings and Endings. But it doesn't actually show it. I can't remember if it's the whole way through the series, or maybe it is. Maybe it just starts like this every time. I can't, to be honest with you, I can't actually remember. Maybe that's a stylistic choice they just decided to go away from.
Mm-hmm.
But either way, I think you said that you wanted to have a go at the German anyway.
Well, I think I'm pretty sure I'm getting this wrong, because I think
what it turns into now is that you have to try and remember the correct.
Remember the German.
You're actually trying to translate it, whereas I'll once you've tried to translate it, then I'll try and pronounce it from Google Translate.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I mean, if you ask me with a gun to my head to say this episode in German, I would say Beginnet und Endet, but I think that's begin and end as opposed to beginnings and endings. So I could easily be wrong.
Well, I put it into the Google Translate for German, which is probably completely wrong, but and I'm getting Anfang und Enden. That's what I'm getting. So,
okay.
Well, let us know in the comments who's correct. Is it
or
Konrad or is it Google?
Yeah.
I have no part in this. Although you can let me know what my pronunciation was like. In terms of the 6 days until the apocalypse, what did you think when you saw that?
So, yeah, again, I was really surprised, because I thought the end of season 1, older Jonas opens the wormhole. Everything's going to go to shit. That's what causes all the, we've seen glimpses of the dead trees and stuff in Vinden. We kind of know there's a cataclysmic event happening, or they're hinting at it, and I thought that was what was going to cause it. So to even go back to the 2019, or in this case 2020, surprised me, and then for it to be 6 days in the future is awesome as a plot device, because you don't get much more of a ticking clock than that. Say you got 6 days, and then the world's going to basically be irrevocably changed. And particularly interesting, given because in the previous scene, Jonas has obviously been looking at the calendar, and the 27th is circled, and we know from this scene that it's Hannah who's circling those, and or who is marking off the X's and then is circling the 27th, which implies at some point in the next 6 days, which presumably is going to be maybe the next 6 episodes. I'm not sure how the timing will pan out, but she's going to find out. Well, she finds out something pretty big in this episode, but she's going to find out something even bigger.
Yeah. Awesome. So a couple of things I wanted to point out at this stage. The fact that the apocalypse comes in season 2, I wanted to point out a couple of times in season 1 that they made allusions to this was going to happen. Sort of, you know how they lay clues for you? Like, you know, how you picked up on clues for the stranger being Jonas in a way, and you also picked up clues for Michael being Mikkel. So there's a couple of clues that have been laid for this apocalypse. The first of which is Ulrich's tag, "No future," is one.
Oh yeah.
Definitely sort of alluding to the idea that, like, you know, the world's going to explode. And then the other one was whenever Hannah and Ulrich were sitting at the bus station, they were talking about what they would wish for, and Ulrich says he would wish for a world without wind. And
yeah, nice going, Ulrich.
Yeah, exactly. So there we go. Just completely out of left field, not about this at all, but it just reminded me, I was watching an interview with the creators, and they mentioned a costume choice that they made in season 1, which was the same clue, and it's so subtle. And this shows you, Konrad, how in this show you have to look into every detail, because listen to this detail that they put in for the Michael reveal, right? They put in this detail. The fact that he was wearing the skeleton clothes. He was the first character that you saw associated with death in any way, wearing the skeleton clothes, after Michael killed himself. That they did that to try and give you a clue that Michael is Mikkel.
I guess that I can kind of see the link there, although I'd say that feels quite on the nose for the kind of I mean, obviously they've said they've done it, but like
they said they did it on purpose. Yeah,
that feels quite on the nose for for them to be like, he's a skeleton. See?
Yeah, well, exactly. But the thing is, like, no one is looking for that.
Yeah, that's true. Maybe so it's hiding in plain sight.
Yeah, so that just shows you how much thought they're putting into the show. You know, which is fantastic. It means they're working with every department to make it.
Oh yeah, like I've got absolutely no doubt that they are just lacing everything with subtext and littering the actual images with little hints to what's going on. It's why those cocoons stuck out to me so much, because they're I feel like they must become important, because they're in pretty much every scene set in 2052. Although I don't know how they're going to become important, but it's like there's nothing that is done by accident in this show.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, awesome. So then we go from the future to sort of I would say the present day, because that's where we started in season 1, which is now 2020. It's moved on from November all the way to June now. So this series has like a sort of a summer feel to it, which is very much 80s sequel.
Yeah.
So basically, Hannah is now distraught because Jonas has gone missing. It's a bit of a question in my mind whether she's distraught over Jonas being missing or Ulrich being missing, but still. So she's seen, as you said, marking off the calendar, and she's sort of just, you know, what did you think? Maybe you didn't really think about it, how many people have gone missing, but when you saw the newspaper, literally got them all missing.
It's like, Jesus Christ, what is going on in this town?
Yeah, and they've even included Mads there, actually, even though it was 33 years before.
Yeah, they just lump him in as well. It has become sort of systemic at this point. Like someone must be, well, as we find out, the higher authorities have eventually taken note of the fact that there are like now half a dozen people who have gone missing in Linden in like the last 6 months.
Yeah, that's crazy.
But I just to talk about Hannah briefly, I thought the marking off of days on the calendar, it really speaks to me as of a kind of low level desperation that a parent would have who's like lost their child, because you kind of continue to mark the days since they went missing, because you kind of have to believe that they're coming back, but she's sort of too broken to do anything else at this point, which it felt very believable to me.
Yeah, exactly. Also, Hannah is Claudia. Falsch.
Yeah.
Okay, so then we get a short, very, very short scene of the Tiedemann family, Bartos, Alexander, and Regina. And Regina's been having cancer treatment, and she's been told that her cancer seems to be in decline, like her health seems to be in decline. They want her to come to the hospital. She refuses to.
Yeah, she doesn't look like she's doing well. She looks like she's kind of accepting that she's probably going to die from this disease.
Yeah, I would assume the same. Again, what are your feelings? Like, how do you feel for Alexander? Like, what are your feelings for these characters at this point?
So Bartos has an interesting arc in this episode. That he has a really, really good scene with Marta a little bit later, where both of those actors get an opportunity to really express how their characters are feeling, and it feels very believable to me. And I think we'll get into this fully at the end, because Bartos is part of one of my theories. But I think that where he ends up in this episode is really, really like poignant for what we see come before that. I'm not going to say any more than that because it'll give something away, but it's I you know, it doesn't start with this, but yeah, there's stuff that Bartos goes through in this episode that makes me maybe feel a bit sorry for him.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay, we'll get into that in the roundup. I think I know where you're going with that, if I'm honest with you. So awesome. So then we get the scene again. It's the start of the new season. You're always going to get new characters.
Yep.
We've got the big police boy coming in to sort this mess out.
Yeah.
So he's introduced. He has a Freud. He says a Freud quote. I've actually got the whole quote here. If you want me to read it? So
yeah, go for it.
He that has eyes to see. Now it doesn't sound as cool in Miesfing and in English as it does in German. Let me tell you that, because Hirn. It's so good. I don't know. This is one of the things that I love about Dark, is that just because it's like foreign to me, that it's every line sounds amazing. So he that has eyes to see and ears to hear may convince himself that no mortal can keep a secret. If his lips are silent, he chatters with his fingertips. Betrayal oozes out of him at every pore. And then he's in one of the funniest introductions to a character. He says, "That was Freud, and I'm Clausen."
Putting himself on a level playing field with Freud.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like Clausen. I've decided already. This guy played Goebbels in Inglourious Basterds, and he was like a really sort of, he was like really hammy in that, and it's really interesting to see him in. I'm going to say it's more restrained, this role, but only just because he sort of comes in with this really dramatic introduction, and it's almost sort of like it's like a classic whodunit detective almost. Like you feel like he already knows everything, and he's just revealing to the characters around him how much he knows gradually as time goes on. I don't think he actually does know everything, but he has that sort of air about him, and it's really, really entertaining.
Yeah, I know exactly what you mean. When I think of whodunit, obviously I think of Knives Out, because that's the most recent.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
big one that I thought. Yeah.
Yeah, that exactly that kind of character.
Yeah, and actually, you saying that he was in Inglourious Basterds makes so much sense to me. I can picture him in it now. I love that film. I haven't actually. I didn't know that until right now. I don't know how.
He looks very different, because obviously in that he's got black hair and brown eyes, and he's wearing I presume he's wearing contacts and dyeing his hair in that, and this is his natural look. But it's nice to see him in something where he gets to be a little bit less of a caricature, but he still has that kind of I guess kind of like flair for the dramatic here, which is really fun to see. And little side note, I bloody love Waller's glasses in this episode.
Yeah.
I really hope his eye is never explained.
Yeah, like it seems to be if he has these glasses on, he had that. How long was the first? I suppose the first season was only about a week in time, wasn't it? 10 days in time.
That is
so
true. Yeah.
it makes sense that he had that thing on his eye for that long. I suppose it was still healing from whatever happened, but it's it was definitely like a huge thing. But now he's like got a sleek new pair of glasses.
Yeah. He looks like Cyclops from the X-Men now. Like he's got a cool
one
half
eye
visor.
one eye Cyclops.
Yeah.
But another thing about Klassen, it makes so much sense to me now that you said he's from Inglourious Basterds, because what we see a lot in TV series in the second season, after a series has done well, in the second season they get a big name actor to come in and play a part. That happens a lot, and that maybe is what this guy is he comes in, he's playing Clausen. He's sort of like, they've got the big guy in, you know what I mean? So I'm sure everyone in Germany knows this actor.
I would assume so. If he's been in a Tarantino film, he must be relatively well known in Germany, and probably rightfully so, because he's really entertaining.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, next scene is Franziska and Magnus.
Magnus with the dreamboat hair here.
Yeah,
blow up for Magnus between the seasons.
Yeah, he's really put some effort in. He's got a girlfriend now, so he's basically letting himself relax a bit, I think. But
yeah,
I love the
letting his hair down.
Yeah, the attention to detail actually. It's probably, to be honest with you, it's probably to portray that he's not caring about cutting his hair because his dad and his brother are gone. But still, it is a glow up. But it's also, he's got his dye, his bleach hair at the end of the long hair. Just to show that all his roots have grown out.
Yeah, no, that is actually, that's a good attention to detail that I hadn't really considered. But yeah, I guess he's probably, the implication is probably that he's just letting his hair grow because he's distracted. And to be honest, actually, his dialogue in this scene, where he seems to me that he kind of just wants all this to be over so people can kind of start healing, which is a very Magnus sentiment to have. He strikes me as a character who's very much a mediator and just wants people to kind of be happy and be all right. And I don't know how active he's going to be in anything else, but he's a really likable character for that reason.
Yeah, and it alludes to that in this conversation where he says it would be better. He kind of feels it would be better for everyone if they were dead.
Yeah, that's kind of what I meant by that. Like, because he wants confirmation. He'd rather get confirmation that his younger brother is dead so people can begin the healing process.
Yeah,
I think like he just wants closure now, which is a pretty stark contrast to his mum, even to Marta to a certain extent as well.
Yeah, exactly. And also just some more flourishing of this relationship, although it very quickly turned into similar ideas from last season.
Yeah, he still doesn't trust her, and rightfully so, as it turns out.
Okay, yeah, rightfully, yeah, because we'll get into that when we get there, but yeah, exactly. So there's still a bit of distrust going on here. All right, then we get Katerina going into the caves, looking very disheveled. It's probably been a rough sort of 7 or 8 months for her.
Yeah, this caught me off guard as well, actually, to be honest. I did not pick her as someone to get involved in this. It makes sense that she would. And actually, also, I will mention at this point, although it's not related to Katerina in any way, I was on tenterhooks for most of this episode with my prediction about Peter Doppler being the next one to time travel. More on that later.
Excellent.
I was furious. I've never been less happy to see Peter Doppler in an episode of television.
I love the idea of your idea of Peter just showing up at a different time and not having a clue what's going on.
I would have done it, but when they were like showing Charlotte in the introduction to Clausen, I was like, Peter's not here. I was really excited. We'll come back to that later.
Okay, awesome. All right, so we'll also catch up with Katerina a bit later as well. But yeah, as you say, it's interesting that she's going down that route. Okay, so then we get back to Jonas, and again, it's more slow moving. Yeah. Sort of, it's not really eerie anymore, but it's sort of very sentimental. He's going through the graveyard, and while he's walking through, we see a number of different graves of people who presumably died in the apocalypse, but we're not quite sure at this point. So
they're all the same date. So, well, most of them are the same date.
Yeah, exactly. And so Jonas actually goes up to his father's gravestone, and he puts the picture of him and his mom and his dad, which I thought was very touching.
There's a lot of both Jonases get a lot of quite touching character moments in this episode. We'll come to it later on, but the older Jonas and the Hannah stuff is very touching, and Jonas's kind of slow acceptance that everyone he knows, or pretty much everyone he knows, is dead, is really touching. I had another question for you out of this scene. One of the graves that's shown is Justina Jankowski, and I can't remember who that is, or if it's someone we've even met before.
So you know the woman who is the uniformed police officer?
Oh, the one in the Clausen scene.
Yeah, she's in a lot. She's in a load of different police station scenes.
Okay.
Dark hair. She's
Yeah.
She's got a uniform on. She's basically one of the only uniformed cops there is. That's her.
Oh, okay. Cool. Oh, I wonder if she's actually been named before, and I
think I'm not sure. I think she does get named at some point. I don't know if she has already, but also
Okay.
I think it's on her badge. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah. Okay, that's cool. I wasn't sure when I saw that. I was like, oh, who's this? But
yeah, I'll nip that in the bud for you, just so you can go on you can go on better theory routes.
Yeah. Yeah. No, the obviously, the martyr grave is the big one here.
Yeah, that's significant because there's
we know she's alive.
Yeah.
She's a character with the scar.
Oh,
and also Agnes Nielsen.
Yeah, she's both of them. Yeah. She might even be Clausen at this stage. Who knows?
Yeah.
All right. Okay. So then we get the scene you were talking about between Bartos and Marta, where they go back and forth in terms of, I don't know, they're sort of just having a go at each other. Really, it starts off quite amicable, and there's a
tension.
There is a tension, and Bartos is like, "Oh, I guess this is it then." And it seems like it is going to end on that tension. But then Bartos just, he goes, "You know what? Frig it," and he just goes in on her.
Yeah. It's
because of Jonas. He says it's because of Jonas, isn't it?
So there was potentially a translation issue here, which confused me slightly. Because he accuses Marta of wanting to end it because of Jonas, and Marta says we hardly ever see each other in regard to Jonas, and he at this point has been missing, I think, for 6 months.
No, I think she must have been referring to her and Bartos.
Oh, okay, maybe I just misread that then. Yeah, because I was like, is that just a translation error, or is it hinting at something we're yet to see between Jonas?
I think she's like not even paying attention to the Jonas thing, because she's like countering that by saying no,
okay,
because we never see each other.
Yeah, okay, that makes more sense. So they're both kind of acting, and again, this is a very believable sort of state of depression and handling of grief, in that they're both kind of acting like they have a monopoly on grief. They're both like, my stuff is worse than your stuff, and the reality is they both have a pretty valid reason for being self-centered and very upset. Although Bartos does completely reconfirm his dickhead status with the popped collar in this scene. So I'm on Team Marta on this one.
Very teenager though, not to empathize with the other person.
Yeah, definitely. And I feel for both of them, to be honest, jokes aside, but I do feel particularly for Marta in this episode, because the episode makes a point of showing how completely alone she is. She just, at least Magnus has Francisca, even if there's some problems there, and Bartos has Alexander and Regina, albeit Regina's very unwell, whereas Marta, I feel like, just has nothing.
Yeah, and because of what happened between her and Jonas and her and Bartos and stuff before Jonas went missing, she didn't have even a stable boyfriend there. Like Bartos, I suppose, was still technically her boyfriend. Like, this is the breakup here, I suppose. But obviously he's got his own stuff going on. He's sort of Noah's little man now. His mum's dying of cancer, so he does have a lot of stuff going. He's got a lot of stuff on his plate. At the same time, he needs to be more empathetic to Marta here, I think. Yeah. Okay, cool. So we then get Alexander giving a speech to the people who work at his power plant, the staff. That's them. And he's telling them that they're going to be closing the power plant. Did this scene feel reminiscent of anything else in the show to you?
Well, I mean, it seems to mirror the opening of the power plant with Bernd sort of trying to cover up all the bodies being found. And
less comedy in this one.
Yeah, a little bit less comedy. Although him being like, on the 27th of June, the plant's being decommissioned, paired with the 6 days to the apocalypse ticking clock, makes me think this might have something to do with that, particularly given they plan to bury barrels of radioactive material under the plant, which seems like it'll be fine.
Yeah, exactly. So I picked up on that mirroring as well of the opening of the plant. That very much sort of marries it mirrors the symbolism of the time machine to me. The beginning and the end of the life.
Yeah, I think it's really hard for me to get into that thematically without spoiling my theories, but I will say that there are several characters and several storylines throughout this episode where this idea of the beginning and end being the same and matching each other are so brilliantly realized. And it took me 2 watches of this episode to really kind of fully arrive at the theories that I ended up with. But as you say, it's not just in the big kind of character theories that I have, it's also in just these little moments where the beginning and the end of the power plant is very similar, and it's so smartly done, and it's not overdone as well, which is a really important thing. They still have moments where they can kind of break away from it and just have the character drama exist on its own terms without really having to serve the plot.
Yeah, exactly. And what did you think? This is our first. We sort of get our first glimpse at these hazmat suits, which will become, in a way, an iconic vision of the show. Anytime you have a costume piece like this, what did you think of these?
Yeah, they're very cool. Very cool. They kind of I don't know what they reminded me of, really. Like they felt reminiscent of something. Obviously, hazmat suits kind of look like hazmat suits, I guess. But
Back to the Future.
Yeah, that's probably what I was. That will be what I was thinking of. I'm almost certain of it. Now you've mentioned it, it'll be the Darth Vader scene in Back to the Future. I'm glad to see they make a comeback because just keeping those 80s vibes going.
Yeah, awesome. Then we get the scene which you said a bit with Stranger, who I still call Stranger even to this day when I'm not talking.
Stranger, that's fine. Yeah.
So with Stranger Jonas, and so instead of saying like old Jonas, I say Stranger Jonas, just so I don't throw you. So Stranger Jonas and Hannah, they meet, but before that happens, Hannah takes out that what we believe is a Chekhov's gun.
Yeah.
Which is it is a Chekhov's gun. Whether that comes to fruition or not, I think at this stage in the show you could definitely call it that. And Hannah looks like she was about to commit suicide.
Yeah, she definitely looked like she was serious.
Definitely looked like she was serious. And then ding dong, Saved by the Bell.
Yeah, convenient timing.
Yeah, exactly.
Almost as if he knew it was going to happen.
Yeah. Well, how would he though? How would he?
Yeah, that's a good point. I don't know. I feel like he must have done.
Yeah. Who knows? But I think I just want to say something about Hannah going to kill herself there. I think that because Hannah seems to be, she hasn't been the most honest person in the show so far, and she's been very, very much out for herself. I think that it's worth bearing in mind this moment. I think this is a very important moment for this character because no matter what's come in the past or perhaps what might come in the future, this moment shows that she is, in my opinion, a human being with proper emotions, and she isn't just trying to hurt Ulrich and all that, that whole stuff. She is genuinely at this point a broken woman.
So do you mean specifically her planning to kill herself, or the later stuff with Stranger Jonas as well?
No, well, obviously, then her relationship then with Jonas as well goes into that. But I mean, just the fact that she was going to kill herself. I think the way that Hannah is portrayed in the fandom, especially considering stuff that she did the first season in terms of lying about certain things and stuff.
Yeah.
I think that she's portrayed as this like narcissist, who goes out, I just feel that like the fact she was going to kill herself over this, I just think that sort of puts a hole in some of the heartless bitch theories, Yeah,
I absolutely. I mean, she has nothing. Like she has absolutely nothing at this point, and that I think, you're absolutely right. Has she behaved sadistically at times? Yes, she has. She's tried to hurt people. She has definitely lied, but ultimately, this is a woman who has lost her husband. Whatever was wrong with that relationship beforehand, it's still a relationship she no longer has. She's lost her son. She's lost her lover. what does she have anymore? And it's totally believable that she would be considering killing herself. And as you say, I think it's important to humanize the character, both in showing how she's feeling before Stranger Jonas turns up and after it as well. I think this is really, to this point, the only moment of emotional warmth I think I've seen from her. And also for Stranger Jonas as well. And just I don't know what it was about this scene. Obviously, it's really great acting, but it was a really touching scene between them. And the mama line from Stranger Jonas really got me. Like, it was really, really touching.
Yeah, this actor is unbelievable, and I think I love this actor so much because we find out at the end of or the middle of the last episode of season 1 that he is Jonas. Like, we get confirmation, and I feel like from that point when we find out, his performance has changed 100% to be Jonas. Like, he is playing the same character as young Jonas.
Yeah, absolutely. I definitely agree.
Yeah, and it's just when he's sitting in the tunnel and he sees his dad with the oil, like covered in the oil or the cesium-137 or whatever it is. From that moment on, in my eyes, it's the same character. I believe that young Jonas grew into this man.
Yeah. I think that's a really good point, that he is. Whereas before he's played quite cryptically, obviously because you don't know who he is. Once he can kind of cut loose, you can absolutely see that he's carrying the exact same pain that young Jonas is carrying with him, only with, I don't know how much older he is, assume maybe, let's say 33 years, but it seems like it's probably about that. He, with 30 years of additional life experiences behind it, but it's maybe dulled them slightly, but it hasn't made those marks on his character go away. They're still there with him.
Yeah, exactly. And let's just really just think about this for a minute. According to Hannah, does she think that she caused Ulrich to disappear by asking Alexander to do it? Ruin his life? Do you think that Hannah thinks that Alexander actually just got him offed?
That's a good question. I mean, how does the timeline line up? So he'd already kind of. I mean, we didn't know he'd gone missing.
She said ruin his life, or make his life a living hell or whatever, and then she never saw him again because I think that day is when he went.
Yeah, so maybe she does. I mean, I think if you were thinking about it in the sort of clear light of day, you'd probably expect Alexander to come back and be like, "Oh yeah, I had that guy killed," but we know that Hannah is a creature of kind of instincts and acts on emotion rather than necessarily thinking things through. So it's totally believable that she'd be like, "Oh well, Ulrich has gone missing. It must have something to do with what I asked Alexander to do to him." Yeah,
like she might blame herself for it as well.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. We then get the scenes you were alluding to earlier where Magnus is sort of following Franziska, and he sees her leaving some paper, probably an envelope or something in a little box. We then later see, we'll sort of connect these two scenes together. We later see then Benny, the prostitute, coming and picking it up. And then Benny takes it back to the caravan. And Magnus goes in the caravan.
little moment of comedy for Magnus here.
Little moment. I love the idea of Benny saying, it's on my break, and then turns around, sees Magnus, this young strapping lad.
Yeah, it's like, well, for you, I'll make an exception.
I'll make an exception for you, young man. And then he just like runs out. But yeah, so what do you think about this sort of the development? This is a sort of a very slow burning subplot, isn't it?
Yeah. So I mean, first of all, bloody Noah ruining the sweet moment between Hannah and Jonas with the voiceover saying everything's predetermined, there is no coincidence.
Yeah.
But I think I'm really interested to see how the Franziska Magnus subplot plays into the wider kind of overarching plot, because it can't be coincidence that Noah is being used for voiceover of these two characters. Yet where they stand at the moment, they're really not involved in the plot in the slightest. I suppose this is maybe the beginnings of that, because we find out by the end of this episode that Benny has some kind of tangential involvement with the cesium. I keep getting the number after it. Is it 137?
That's it, yeah.
Yeah, season 137. But I'm fascinated to see what they are giving to Benny. It looked like what Benny was giving back was an envelope full of money to me, which, given we see Voller giving her an envelope full of money later in the episode, makes me think that Voller is perhaps aware that that's being passed on to Francisca and Magnus. I'm not really sure what's going on with this though.
Yeah, and also, did you pick up the relationship between Voller and Benny?
Yeah, so they seem like they're siblings, which is it was quite sweet. I
Yeah,
thought
exactly. I
Voller
like that.
didn't know how to act at all, but wanted to have some kind of emotional attachment.
Yeah, I really like the I really like how even the small characters sort of get their little pockets of the society. I
Yeah.
think also if any listeners, eagle-eared listeners picked it up, just to quote Konrad from the other day, it picked it up last season. I don't know if you picked this up, Konrad. No one commented about this. I called Benny Voller one time last season.
Oh, did you?
Mm-hmm.
I did not notice that.
Yeah, I said Benny Voller.
Giving the whole game away.
I know. You basically know the whole of Dark now.
I know you've you've just blown the whole thing wide open.
Yeah, as soon as I said it, I was like, "Here come the comments."
I mean, I'm not going to say this actually, or I am going to say it, but I'm going to preface it by saying I don't mean this super seriously. But as it stands at the moment, Benny doesn't seem like they're going to be that major a character. But I don't know. Like Dark has a way of subverting those expectations and suddenly turning minor characters into major ones. So we'll see what happens with that.
Yeah, exactly, and also no matter what happens in terms of the Francisca and Magnus plot, I like that there still is some interesting stuff I like going on in that plot. Like he didn't trust her in the first season. I like how they didn't just say, "Okay, these two characters are just joined at the hip. We'll write them as one from now on." I like that there still is some dynamic going on between them.
Yeah.
Okay, so now we get one of the most interesting scenes. Well, I say that this episode is a banger of a first episode for a season.
Yeah, it really is. It's
there's
like
so many good scenes. Like
great scene after great scene in this episode.
Let's be honest. I keep looking at like the notes that I've got here, and the next thing I'm just like, oh my god, I can't wait to talk about that. So basically, one of the scenes that stands out for the whole season for me is just the reveal that young Noah and old Noah are actually working together in a way, like as a mentor-mentee relationship. That really caught me off guard, to be honest with you.
And the fact that they seem to be honest about it.
Yeah.
We get another Ik bin Du in this scene, a slightly less fist pumping one perhaps than the Jonas one, but I think the thing that stuck out to me about this scene was I suggested at the end of last season, it might have been in the roundup episode, that I suspected that that we're going to meet who's the person who's pulling Noah's strings in this season, and that Noah may start to pull away from them and form his own plans.
Yeah.
And the when young Noah sort of questions how you know what's good and evil, and old Noah responds by saying, by not following anyone but ourselves. Mm-hmm. To me, that implies that he's already starting to think of kind of pulling away from Adam's plan. But we'll see where that goes.
Yeah, that's interesting. When you said that, to pull away to see who's sort of really in charge, in my head I was like, oh my god, he's only gone and done it. Change that theory matrix score to a -3.
He's such a good character that the way it's just kind of what I meant when I said that Dark is a really interesting series, because it takes kind of traditional narrative structures and ideas. You introduce a really strong bad guy, then you introduce their boss, and then you sort of descent between them, and that's an interesting like dynamic that you can have. But he's so well written that it doesn't matter that that's like quite a typical kind of plot dynamic, because I can't wait to see what happens with him. Like Noah's really cool as a bad guy, because he absolutely believes what he's doing, and I can't wait to see what happens between him and Adam.
Yeah, and in the words of Quentin Tarantino, you've got to know the rules to break the rules.
Yeah, absolutely. There's nothing wrong with following the rules either. They're rules for a reason.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, because they are satisfying. Okay, cool. What did you think about the casting of young Noah?
It was really good. There again, I don't want to spoil anything. There is some really good casting of characters and actors in this episode. Young Noah is a very good one. There's one other one which I'll talk about at the end that I was like, oh wow, that is great.
Yeah, okay. Was that casting? As soon as you saw an actor, did you think of a character in particular?
Be honest, no, actually. Like it was so the moment I saw young Noah, I was like, that's young Noah.
Oh, really? That's awesome.
Yeah, but the one that when I on the second watch, I sort of started forming ideas about. That was the one that I was like, that is actually amazing. But for some reason, I didn't clock it the first time. But yeah, I don't know what it was about young Noah. Actually, I think it was maybe just the eyes.
I think I've actually watched them talking about how they cast before, and they've pinpointed certain facial features that if you have the same eyes and the same mouth, it doesn't matter about the nose. Or if you have like the same nose and then the same like ratio of something, they've pinpointed a couple of things that they can look at. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's just so cool. So there's actually a picture on the internet you can see of young Noah and old Noah split down the middle and next to each other, and it is it's spooky, to be honest.
I was really pissed off, to be honest, in that first scene, because literally as soon as he came on screen, I was like, "That's young Noah," and then it's revealed in that scene, and it was one of those things where like, well, no one's going to believe me when I say I called that before they said it, because it's in the same damn scene. But yeah, it is really good casting for young Noah as well.
Yeah, awesome. Okay, so then we finally get sort of a bit of meat on the bone in terms of the future timeline. So
this opening shot, Jesus Christ, the opening shot of this scene is horrible, with the like cocoons in the forest and the bodies hanging from the trees. Like, what a shot that is! But Jesus Christ.
Yeah, it's really sowing fear in this world. Like I wouldn't want to live in this world.
Yeah, it doesn't look great. Does not look great.
Doesn't look great. So we get some fellas who are getting strung up.
A couple of French lads in Tron suits.
Yeah, exactly. The suits actually kind of remind me like of astronaut cooling suits.
Yeah, like, they definitely seem like vaguely futuristic and like kind of environmental protection kind of stuff.
Yeah, like they're definitely doing something. But so yeah, they're getting strung up because I think it's what I gauged from it was that they were trying to get in to the dead zone. And this group of people who are chanting Sic Mundus Creatus Est seem to be in a way policing that area.
Yeah, they seem like almost like religious about it, like it's some kind of sort of doomsday cult in a way.
Yeah, exactly. So then it sort of the scene ends with Jonas approaching the two women and talking about wanting to know what's behind the wall, and that's sort of the end of the scene. So I'll let you go on this scene.
So first thoughts, man, Ellie has become a real badass in the future. Like, I don't know how a deaf-mute soldier with one eye works, but she seems to be doing fine, so I'm not going to question it. But when I saw that character, I was like, that can't be Ellie. And then obviously there's a cut at the end of the episode, end of the scene. Yeah. It was like, how the hell does Ellie get from where she is now to that? But yeah, I'm really interested to see more of Ellie now. I can see kind of why I'm starting to see why she's one of your favorite characters. Yeah. Couple of interesting things from that scene though. So that the sort of, there is that kind of religious doomsday cult talk to this between Ellie and the unnamed brunette girl, with the sort of the faithless are dead and the passage will open and paradise mentioned again. My suspicion is that, and this one is on the Theory Matrix, but I'll mention it now, that Ellie doesn't actually buy into sort of the religious side of this and is just using it to kind of surround herself with an army of guns. And maybe they're trying to stop people from messing with the God particle or something along those lines. Because she seems incredibly competent. But yeah, it was great to see her.
Yeah, exactly. And sort of as well, like in terms of like, there's a big mystery as to how like the Sic Mundus Creatus Est. She did mention something about a passage will open to paradise.
Yeah.
So they're sort of counting down in the same way. So it sort of. So I think they even said in 6 days it will open to paradise.
Yeah,
so like every timeline is viewing the 6 days in a way, and they're viewing it for different reasons. Like the apocalypse, paradise opening, start of the new cycle, the power plant closing. Like it's all leading to this one thing. Yeah, exactly. And young Marta's doing well there on this scene as well.
Yeah, young Marta and old Ellie holding down the fort in the future.
Yeah. Okay, so next scene, we get confirmation of a theory that you forgot to put on your theory matrix. And
yes.
That is that H.G. Tannhaus is Charlotte's grandfather.
Yeah, that is true. Although, to be honest, I was too busy being furious that we saw Peter Doppler in this scene to me. I went from being like, "Oh my god, that's Ellie," to shouting at Peter Doppler that I was frustrated that he didn't travel through time. But yeah, I've added that to the matrix now, so it'll actually put me on -3 for
Yeah, so
this.
you should have been minus. Oh, actually, no. So that still counts as a season 2 confirmation, doesn't it? Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm -3 now.
Okay, that's cool.
Creeping towards 0.
Yeah, you are. You're creeping there. So in the scene in the little shop, it's only just like they reveal the parentage or the grandfather of Charlotte is Paige Tanas, but then it cuts to Klaus and Charlotte in the police station, and they're talking about the case in a way, and Clausen seems to be honing in on Ulrich straight away. He already knows about the voicemail somehow.
Yeah, so I mean, it's that kind of that sense with this character that he knows more than he's letting on is really, really entertaining, and I think it's pretty obvious to me from this scene that he actually, I think he starts this scene by asking Charlotte about her grandfather, just kind of like idle chatter, and then he immediately tries to catch her off guard by asking her about Ulrich and the voicemail by doing like a left turn into a random conversation. So he clearly doesn't trust her.
He's interrogating his own staff.
Yeah, basically. He doesn't seem to trust Voller either, based on his reaction when he brings the interview notes, which is, justified given what we know about Voller.
He's probably right. Yeah, he's probably right not to trust Voller. Let's be honest.
Yeah, I mean, at the very least, Voller seems incompetent, and at worst, he's actually corrupt. So
yeah, it's all in that shifty eye,
Yeah.
So Clausen also adds in the little detail that he doesn't drive. What do you think about that?
Yeah, that is not true. What kind of police officer doesn't drive? Like, that's an absolute lie.
Yeah, it's a way of getting closer to people, I think.
Yeah, he wants to spend some more time with Charlotte. He even says you keep on asking people the same questions and look for little differences in their stories each time they give them to you. And he, I think it's pretty obvious that he's doing that to Charlotte right now. So I'll be interested to see how that develops.
Yeah, awesome. We then get the great Mikkel Houdini, and he. Did you notice this time that it is a very young-looking actor? On the poster, I mentioned before that I like the attention to detail that the poster is of a young, like even 2 or 3 years before they would have shot this. Anyway, it doesn't matter.
I didn't notice. I didn't actually think to look for that, but yeah, I totally believe that they would, have got a younger photo of their actor for the sake of making it look believable.
Yeah, it's cool. So Marta goes in. She discovers what her mother has been up to this whole time, and Katarina's actually been sort of doing the same research that Ulrich was doing. So she's sort of following up on his research, and she's sort of figuring out that there's something to do with the caves here as well. And yeah, so she's just Marta. Now, do you think Marta's going to go in the same way now as her mother and father?
It's hard to say with Marta because she's so alone. She has nothing keeping her here anymore, which does make me wonder whether she might. I feel, her father's effectively dead unless something crazy happens. Her mother has basically abandoned her. Yeah, I think she might be off into the caves herself. And as we found with the caves, when people travel through time through the caves, unless they know what they're doing, they don't tend to come back. So that could be a real sort of tipping point for Marta's story.
Yeah, exactly. Like, because if you don't know how to navigate the caves and you just sort of happen upon the tunnel by chance, you're not going to find it again. And we know Mikkel tried to find it; he couldn't find it.
Yeah.
So if she does manage to get in there, geez, she's gone. Right. Okay. So next, I'm sure you were loving this scene. It is the introduction of Adam. Now, did you think you were gonna get this character this early?
No, I did not. I thought they would be a kind of, a hidden hand guiding things from the shadows, but yeah, the opening dialogue from this scene where he's talking about like the futility of existence and how people would crack if they found out. So that like sense of superiority, that we're the ones who can handle the responsibility for doing this and we can't share it with the rest of the people because they simply wouldn't be able to manage the responsibility, is really, really good bad guy talk. And yeah, there is some stuff that is said in this scene that got my mind racing both the first and the second time I watched this episode.
Awesome. Adam also mentions here that there's 6 days left until the final cycle beginning. So we already saw that the final cycle was in Noah's book. There's the first mention of the missing pages. So you must find the missing pages. Where do you think these missing pages might be?
Oh, Claudia's definitely got those. Claudia's up to no good. If I know Claudia, she's she's squirreled them away somewhere. But I love that as like the kind of, we come back to this at the end of the episode when we see Noah packing up his bag and heading off to do some more time traveling, presumably to try and find the pages. As a kind of a concept to sort of motor the plot forward. It's like, here you go. This is what Noah's off to do. Who has the pages? What are they doing with them? I reckon it's Claudia, and I want to see Claudia and Noah go head to head. Just to give a brief little nod to what Adam says in this scene when Noah is talking about Bartosz, and he says he has always been naive by nature, which implies that he has known Bartosz for quite a long time.
Interesting. Well, remember Noah did bring Bartosz in.
Yeah.
Into the fray. So so it's because we're dealing with time, Bartosz could be an old man by this point. So
he could be.
Okay, cool. So so that's that. It's interesting that in this series, or in the first series, we didn't really get a plot until like episode 8.
Yeah, we've got like 3 different plot lines going at like already.
Yeah, it's already like missing pages, apocalypse. It's so much. Yeah,
like stuff Magnus and Franziska are, doing something with Benny and Vola. There's a lot of plots going on already.
Yeah, exactly. So it's great. Okay, so next scene is we get another scene with Jonas and stranger Jonas and Hannah. And Jonas is explaining to her sort of how it's possible, sort of in a way that I am your son, whether you believe it, even though this time has passed, even though, if deterministic stuff didn't exist, we could bring the other one back. The other one is me, and Hannah sort of, it was so fun. It was quite funny to me, to be honest with you, because he's sitting there explaining it all and she seems to be taking it in. And then at the end of it all, she just goes, "Where's my Jonas?" Right?
Yeah.
And that made me laugh because I'm a maths teacher and I'm just sitting there like, okay, so this fraction, this, and the people's like, yep. And then at the end, they just go, "So 2?" And it's like,
no! You're not getting it, Hannah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, there's there were 2 big things that I took out of this. Well, actually, no, there's some lines that Stranger Jonas says that stood out to me. So I exist infinitely. I'm in every second between my birth and my death. But intimating that it's kind of like he's a different person at each point in that, which is fascinating, and we will come back to that later. So I forgot to mention this earlier, but I thought the end of season 1, talking about how I thought opening the portal under Vinden would kind of cause the catastrophe. I expected Stranger Jonas to have died as a result of that. I didn't expect to see him again. So obviously it was a surprise to see him in this episode, and then to get this confirmation here that opening it damaged the physical passage by the sound of things, which actually makes it harder for the people in the future to fix the past by the sounds of things, because they're talking about the passage reopening and all that stuff. Was nice to kind of clarify that. So that was really interesting to see. And I'm not really sure whether it was something that I'm supposed to recognize, but Jonas definitely turned to look at something on the floor at the end of this scene, and I don't really know what it was he was looking at.
Yeah, well, it's not really sure. You can't tell really. He looks around. Is he looking at the floor? Is he looking at the wall? I don't know. but he's looking at something, and we'll see if that becomes important later on. In terms of Jonas, Stranger Jonas's sort of storyline so far in this series, how do you feel like in terms of like? I think this is obviously you said you thought he was going to be dead, so you probably never even conceived of the idea that he would have this reunion with his mother. So how do you feel that you actually got to see this?
I think it's great. This is one of the highlights of the episode for me. It's really probably the sort of emotional heart of this episode. We kind of return to this periodically to get these like really kind of warm, fluffy character moments in between the more sort of stodgy plot stuff. But yeah, I was really pleased to see him still alive, because I think there was more to come from him as a character, and in retrospect it wouldn't have really made sense for him to die, because we'd only just got confirmation that he was even Jonas, so there was loads of stuff that we can see him do.
It would have been terrible for us to know that the young Jonas we've been following from the start, you know, no matter what he does, he dies at the end of the first season. Do you know what I mean? That would have been hard to get our head around, if you know what I mean.
It would have kind of laced the whole thing with a sense of, well, just doomed inevitability, I guess, which maybe there will be some of that, but it's nice not to have it confirmed super early so we can remain optimistic.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so we then get the not time traveling Peter and
son of a bitch.
and Ellie.
What is Ellie reading here? Like,
yeah, it's actually I can't remember actually what it's called, the book. But
she picks up one that's called the Kybalion, which is like Hermetic philosophy, which made me fist bump myself, because I was like, Emerald Tablet, thank you very much. But like, she seems to be like reading books on sort of philosophy and black hole theory.
Well, I think that. Okay. I don't know what I imagine. I think. Should I say something? Yeah, I'll say it. I think that they're actually in H.G. Tannhouse's clock shop, and they
are. They're cleaning out his shop. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, she's not really reading it then, is she? Like,
she seemed like she was reading it to me. I'm just saying, my Ellie and Yasin are evil masterminds.
You mean the picture book?
Yeah. The one with the I don't know what that is, like depictions of the different worlds or whatever. But my Ellie and Yasin are evil masterminds theory gained some credence with this, because she looked like she was taking that all in.
Yeah, we accidentally saw some training going on there.
Yeah.
So then she opens up the Hermetic textbook. Also, did you notice that the character at the very beginning who got killed by young Noah had the Emerald Tablet on his chest?
Yes, I did. Which it's the same tattoo that Noah has on his back.
Oh, yes, it is.
Which is interesting.
Very interesting, yeah. So basically, she opens up that book and she finds a picture. And in that picture, she's able to pick out Noah.
Yes.
What do you want to say?
Well, it looks like there's a group of people from the 20s, which included Noah and also includes Adam, because he's at the front, that presumably H.G. Tannhaus knew, or at least knew of, which I haven't really started to unpack my thoughts too much on that, but it must mean that H.G. Tannhaus, did he find out about them later after he'd started his own investigations into black hole stuff? I think probably. I don't think he's directly involved with Noah and Adam and the people working with Adam, but the sort of the picture kind of showing a group of people who are involved in this does sort of broaden the scope of the characters we can potentially meet who are working for Adam. I mean, obviously we see that female character come and they come and get Adam and say they're ready for you, or like they're ready to hear you speak or something at the end of his scene with Noah.
Which implies a group of some sort, doesn't it?
Yeah. So I'm interested to see, what this group is doing, like what they're called, or, what's actually going on with them. But that I haven't thought too much about the relationship that this implies with H.G. Tannhaus yet, or even if there is a relationship.
Okay, cool. So the next scene we get is Jonas seems to be going around and packing up his stuff because he seems to have the plan. He's going to go and try and get into the dead zone and see what's in there.
Yeah, we see the necklace again here.
Yeah, he takes a moment actually sort of dwelling on the necklace, doesn't he?
Yeah.
and he pops it away in his pocket. He doesn't want to forget that. But so he sort of is just packing up in Claudia's bunker. And I think the playing of the cassette tape at the start it sort of confirms that is Claudia's bunker.
Yeah.
Okay, then we get a sort of a shot that mirrors Ulrich when he was going through the papers in season 1 with Marta from up above, her going through all of the papers. Magnus comes in. They have a little chat about it still. I think we've said most of what we're going to say about her going through this stuff, but is there anything else you wanted to add?
Just that Magnus has got a really cool T-shirt that has like Doom, Doom, Doom written on it, which I was a really big fan of. But yeah, Marta once again reiterating that she doesn't like secrets, which is ironic given the family she's in and who she will become, or who I suspect she will become.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. Joining us late, Konrad's theory is that she is Agnes. I think the Agnes theory is a lot more serious than the Scarface.
Yeah, the Agnes one I actually do believe. The Scarface girl one is just like, there was basically when I first saw that girl, there was a brief thought in my head, like, oh, maybe that's Marta, which obviously doesn't make any sense because the age doesn't work. She's looks completely different. It's a ridiculous theory, but because my brain thought it, I have to commit it to the theory matrix. But
yeah.
The Agnes Nielsen one, I would not be too surprised if that happened, although there are valid questions about, them having the same surname if she's trying to hide.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, cool. We then get sort of what seems to be Bartos's eventual proper, okay, I'm going to join Noah now.
Yeah, like this is him crossing the Rubicon here. Like he seems scared. He seems a little bit reluctant, to be honest, like through the way he is in this episode. We didn't really mention it, but there's a moment after his scene with Marta where he gets a text from a quote unquote unknown number. But given the stinger that plays when he reads it, we know exactly who it's from.
Yeah.
And, the way the actor kind of plays it on his face, you can see the fear and the uncertainty in his performance. But as you say, I think there's no turning back for Bartos now.
Yeah, he's going down the route. Okay, so we'll skip over the Torben and Benny scene because we sort of chatted about that.
Yep.
So now Peter and Charlotte, in a surprising twist, have almost they've decorated the bunker like Pepe Sylvia style.
Yeah.
And they're now trying to figure out this whole time travel thing together. Charlotte comes down and Peter's there, and Peter shows the photo of Noah, and it says in the back it was taken on the 8th of January 1921, which is that close to the date that we saw at the very, very beginning?
I don't think so. Let me just check. No, the beginning was the 21st of June, 1921. Okay, so it's like the beginning of that year, basically.
Oh, okay. So that's actually, so that's like 6 months later or whatever.
Yeah.
5 months later, whatever it is. Yep. Okay, cool. So, and it also says in the back, Secundus Creatus Est as well.
Yeah, they love writing that all over the place.
Yeah, exactly. And I will say, before I let you go on this little bunker scene, is that whenever Charlotte reads it and she's like, Secundus Creatus Est?
Yeah, she really leans into it.
Yeah, that performance, like that line read of that is what plays in my head every time I see Secundus Creatus Est.
Oh, really? Yeah, it is. It is a really good voicing of that line, I have to say. This scene is, as much as I was annoyed that Peter Doppler was still around, it's kind of it's really funny and also quite sweet that these two, whose marriage was, let's say, struggling in the last season, they had some problems, and it's kind of been saved by this joint investigation they're making into a body turning up and some time travel crimes, which is whatever works to save your marriage. It's a long old haul marriage. You've got to just find the things that work for you as you go through life.
Yeah, Peter is a therapist, so he probably prescribed this, I think.
Yeah, exactly. So just solve some crimes together. Maybe go on a trip to the 80s, and it'll bring you closer together. But I just love the idea of these two like beavering away in this bunker night after night, trying to figure out what's going on with Noah.
Some couples play chess, some couples watch TV together. These two are in a bunker, just like,
drawing pictures of Noah.
Yeah. Okay, so we go then into the next part. We sort of get a mini montage.
Yeah.
The montage that you saw in season 1 will come back. This one, there was so much meat in this episode that they had only had a couple of things sort of to sew up in terms of the sort of letting us dwell on them. But there was a few things in the montage. There was Magnus 6 missed calls to Francisca, trying to get in contact with her. She's sitting there with Ellie on the on the couch. Obviously, the parents aren't at home, so they're sort of alone while their parents are trying to figure out this whole thing. Hannah's with Stranger in Jonas's bedroom, and she sort of notices the scars on his back, and there's a very touching moment where you can see real concern in the actress's performance for her son.
Yeah.
Really sort of just reflecting on what her son's been through. We also get the barrels getting filled up with cement. They're getting
They're burying them in the pool.
Burying them in the pool, yeah. And then we get Noah coming out of the church as well, young Noah.
Yeah, so I liked Ellie has traded in her fox hat for a fox. I guess it's just a stuffed fox at this point, but I appreciate the consistency in her attachment to foxes. And I might be wrong on this, but I vaguely remember talking about the Hannah and Stranger Jonas scene. I vaguely remember a scene in season 1 after one of Jonas's trips into the 80s where he comes back and sits on the edge of her bed and I think reaches out to touch her in the same way. Maybe I'm misremembering that, but to me, so it was just kind of a really touching mirror of that scene to me, which again, this relationship is kind of the emotional heart of this episode, and it's really sweet, and it's really nice to see Hannah get a moment to, I don't want to say redeem her character, because this isn't really redeeming it. It's just kind of fleshing her out and showing her to be more than just the bad things that she's done. There is a human in here. There is a mother in here. And as you say, burying the radioactive stuff in the concrete, that seems like it might be a bad idea based on how this episode ends.
Yeah. So just to touch on the Hannah thing, so far in the series, no matter how fractious Hannah's relationships have been with everyone else, there's never been a moment ever that she has been anything but, constant to Jonas. She hasn't actually ever. They've never had a family spat. Whenever she is talking to Jonas, I remember in the first season when they were sitting on the bench together, it always is quite. It's very sort of, nice, and the relationship is very good. Jonas seems to be her rock,
Yeah, I think the closest their relationship ever gets to a negative is when she encourages him to skip school to hang out with her, which that's pretty good going if that's the worst your relationship has ever gotten with your son.
Yeah, and even at that, that's alluding to a good relationship.
She just wants to spend time with him because she knows he might need, some comforting.
Yeah, it's just bad influence, I suppose. Okay, so the next thing is, or the last thing actually, is Jonas gets into the dead zone, and we see I'm sure is what Claudia was referring to on the tapes as the God particle. Yeah. And it's going mental. What do you think?
This scene is unbelievable. So I'm just going to do a sort of play-by-play of my thoughts in this scene. So obviously he's going through the woods first off, so he hasn't actually gotten into he does cross the wall in this scene, but you see the sort of aircraft, whatever they all are flying overhead, and they still definitely look like something out of Terminator to me, like this kind of futuristic aircraft. Then he crosses into the power plant. We see the cocoons all over the place again, and they get this kind of rising, buzzing, synthy sound in the score when they're on screen, which is awesome. And it's just so brilliantly shot and so brilliantly presented. It's so tense and ominous. There's this amazing use of negative space when he's inside the plant with just blackness everywhere, and that kind of lasting shot. When Jonas looks at the hazmat suits and then looks into the gap in the door that's just pitch black, which is the room that the God particle is in. And then the reveal of the God particle itself is so unsettling. And it just immediately, the design of it and the sounds it makes and the way it moves, it just immediately seems really bad. And then there is I don't actually know, when did this season come out? Or when did this episode, I guess, come out?
This episode came out. Actually, I think it was released on the day of the apocalypse. No,
So it was in
actually,
2020.
no, it wouldn't have been. It was 2019. It came out. It was June 2019.
Okay, because there's an episode of the series Chernobyl, which if you haven't seen that, everyone listening, you should go and watch it because it's amazing. There's an episode where they send some divers into the basement of the plant because they need to go and basically release some water pressure to stop the water from like superheating and causing like an explosion. And that episode ends with a cut to black and the sound of the divers breathing really heavily, and just the sound of a Geiger counter and a pitch black screen. And that really reminded me of this. I don't know which one came first. Maybe they didn't influence each other at all. But that cut to black.
I'm pretty sure this came first before.
It might, it might well have done, yeah. But that, cut to black with just the really heavy breathing of Jonas, and we're just left to sit there and stew on what we've just seen. It's such a fantastic ending.
Yeah, exactly. All right, I'm sure we'll get into more of it in the roundup. So let's move into there now.
Yep, let's do it.
Okay, so Konrad, you told me that you have a lot of theories coming out of this episode. I want to go through them as quick as we can because we are pushing the time. I'm sure in the question and answer as well, we'll also go into further information about your theories. But before we do that, let's have a look at the IMDb rating as always. This episode got an 8.9, which puts it actually high up in terms of last season's. But I think 9.2 was the highest from last season. So what do you think?
I would probably put this in the high 9s, to be honest. It was such a good episode.
Yeah, exactly. It is. Yeah, it's definitely, if not a full 10, like at this stage from here on out, there's probably an argument for every episode being a 10 in my opinion.
Yeah, it's such a good reintroduction to the series. The reveals are fantastic. There's good character moments between, Hannah and Stranger Jonas and Bartos and Marta. Future stuff is awesome. Like I can't wait to see more of the future. So yeah, it's a phenomenal episode.
Yeah. Okay, cool. All right. So I think the listeners have all been waiting patiently while you allude to things that you're dancing around. What are your theories coming out of this episode?
So I'll start with the biggie, which is actually 2, really. Okay. So on my first watch through, after that scene with Adam and Noah, where Adam says Bartos has always been naive or something along those lines, and it's obviously implied that he knows Bartos quite well. My suspicion was that Adam was Bartos, a future version of Bartos, or an aged version of Bartos. They have the same eye color, and we know that Bartos is being recruited into Adam's service, into Noah's service, I guess, via, but with kind of Adam's blessing. Mm-hmm. But on my second watch through, I watched the first scene, and I have never been more convinced that the man who young Noah kills at the beginning is Bartos, because they look so much alike that it would almost be ridiculous to me if that character isn't an older Bartos. And also because this theme of the beginning and end matching would, to me, feel like it works quite well with this idea of like Noah, an old Noah recruiting Bartos, and then a young Noah ultimately killing Bartos as one of his first acts, or what seems like one of his first acts in Adam's service.
That's really cool. Like it's the beginning for one and the end of one in one moment.
Exactly.
And then the beginning for the other and the end of the other. That's cool. Yeah.
So I'm pretty much like nailed on that. I think I fully believe that. So that then raised the question to me, well, who is Adam? And obviously there's the possibility that it's just another character. It's not someone we haven't met. But to be honest, it's a bit sort of, I guess, a bit kind of meta to think this way. But the fact that his face is kind of, scarred and obscured made me think that feels like they're maybe trying to conceal a familiarity in this character's appearance. So who could that possibly be? And we know that he has known Bartos for a long time because of how he describes his character, which means to me that it's likely that Adam is someone probably from Vinden who knew Bartos as a teen. And there's only one teen in Vinden that we've met who has brown eyes, or who develops brown eyes as he gets older, and that's Jonas. Okay. there's a conversation, and this leads me into this conversation that Jonas has with Hannah, where he says that he exists in all times infinitely, but as different people, which to me seems to be heavily implying that Adam is also Jonas. And potentially, I don't know, maybe at the end of his life when he's become, I don't know, maybe he's become bitter and, I don't know, twisted by his failures to fix things, or he's become warped by experiences that Strange Jonas is yet to have. But again, you know, it ties back into this. There's almost like this lyrical quality to the narrative structure of this episode and indeed this show, if this turns out to be correct, because we've got sort of Jonas at the beginning of his adventure, Jonas in the middle of his adventure, and then Jonas at the end, and they're kind of guiding this episode and the plot in general to its conclusion. So I mean, it's possible that Adam is just some random guy that we haven't met before, but I'm really interested to see where that goes going forward.
Interesting. Yeah, so two great theories. I think they do count as two theories, wouldn't they? Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely wouldn't mark them down as one. They're way too verbose to be one.
Yeah. So that's definitely two theories. But yeah, great theories. I love that we've already got, like, you know, this person is this theories in the.
Yeah. We've got I've got 4 more. These are much smaller ones, so I'll probably just fire through these so people
just out of curiosity, I want to put a question out there. When going through the ideas of who Adam was there anyone else who was actually in your mind? And I know, like, you're thinking about that, like he's known Bartos for a while. I think we could agree that was implied heavily. So who else could it be in the storyline? Like, I've got someone in my mind, but I don't want to say it because, you know, I've seen the show, but there's someone in my mind who could also fit.
So someone else who knows Bartos.
Yeah.
Well, I suppose, I mean, let's
maybe say a character who we've already seen talking to himself once.
Yeah, I mean, it could also be Noah. It was the eye color that made me think it's not an older Noah.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
But I mean, it could easily be. It's not this. This is one of those things where I've really jumped at the first thing they've thrown me with this character.
Yeah.
And it, you know, if it turns out to not
You've done that before.
I have done it before. It's bit me before, this habit. But if it turned out to be Noah, I wouldn't be disappointed at all, because that Noah to me feels almost like the kind of yin to Jonas's yang. Like, kind of you know, we're seeing a lot of the same kind of big story beats in terms of meeting their younger selves and guiding their younger selves through their sort of role and things. So it could easily be Noah as well. I guess it was mainly the eye color that convinced me it wasn't going to be that. But yeah, Magnus was the other one I thought about, but I feel like Magnus would have to go through so much from where he is now, as well as obviously his eye color changing in order to end up where Adam appears to be, that I kind of discounted him.
Yeah, and I think you're right to focus on eye color here as well, whether it is Jonas or not, because if they put in that much effort into the prosthetics on the character, why wouldn't they just put lenses in as well, you know? Yeah.
I mean, the you know, the disfigurement might be a red herring, but it just, and I felt a bit bad doing it, because I did kind of have in my head this idea that, like, okay, they've deliberately obscured what that person looks like, which to me suggests it's someone that we already know, on top of obviously saying that they know Bartos, or implying that they know Bartos in the script. But yeah, it certainly made for some fun theory crafting.
Yeah, exactly. And in a show like this, it's sort of that is what it's intended for. I think if it was a different type of show and there was a very clear, like, burns victim or something, you know, you shouldn't just be thinking, oh, who could they be? You know, sometimes people are just burns victims.
Yeah.
But yeah, I can understand why you're theorizing based on that in this.
Yeah.
Okay, so what were your other 4 quick ones?
Okay, so the quick ones are, number 1, the apocalypse is going to include some kind of irradiated bug monsters and possibly a war to exterminate them. They either came to our dimension via the God particle or were mutated by the radiation. So I'm not that confident about that one, to be honest.
That makes me think we're going to get in this show, even though I've seen it, but we're going to get in this show that moment where they're like, you go on, I'll hold them off.
Yeah, absolutely. That's where Regina's going to have her sword fight. She's gonna take out.
She takes the blade out after all these years.
Yeah, yeah. She finally withdraws the blade from its scabbard, and she's all full of she's like mid chemo, so she's already really weakened. Otherwise, she would take them down no problem because
I
she's
think it's that the scene before that she like very dramatically like decides enough's enough, and she shaves her head.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, I can see it all now. I can't wait for this to be revealed. Yeah, so that I'm not that convinced that that's going to happen, but the cocoons made me think it, so it's going in the theory matrix. Next one is Ellie hasn't bought into the religious cult stuff and knows more than they are letting on about the God particles, so that's kind of already been discussed.
Okay.
Claudia stealing the pages from the book, and the future torch has some use against whatever comes out of the cocoons. So double dipping on that theory, so it could potentially cost me double points.
Yeah. I love how you're doing that. Right, okay, cool. So there's some great theories to start off. I'm interested to see how they develop across the season, but I think just to sum it up in general, I think this is a absolute fantastic start to the season. How would you rate, obviously it's different starting a second season to a first season, but how would you rate this episode in the context of starting a season compared to the first episode of last season?
Oh, I think this is way better. I mean, the first episode of the first season is pretty slow paced. Stuff happens in it, definitely. But when you compare it to this, when we talked about previously looking back on where you started and then looking at where you are now and being like, how far have we come that we're now at this? And that's kind of what it feels like.
We're already
now.
there. Yeah,
we've got Adam with his disfigured face guiding Noah, who's talking to his younger self to travel through time to get pages to a book which tells people what they need to do in various different timelines. And Claudia's off doing God knows what. And Jonas is talking to himself in potentially 3 different periods in his life. I don't know what's going on anymore, but it's amazing. This was I was so glad to be back, and this was such a strong start to a season.
Unbelievable. Great. Okay, so I just have to have a little bit of disappointing news for the world. What the Dob is over. What the Dob is over.
It was just rubbish.
It's so bad that there's just nothing sticking out to me. Like honestly, I'm guys, I care about your time too much. So it's not over fully. I'm still gonna it is when I'm preparing for the episode, like and getting the pictures and all that sort of thing. It's much easier for me to watch it in the dub because I can still hear what's happening in the episode while concentrating and doing other things. So I still will be watching the dub. So what the dub can come back if I notice something really great. But I just got to the point where in this episode where I was just like, maybe it's just because I wasn't on form for choosing a funny moment, but I just honestly didn't notice anything. The whole thing is ridiculous anyway, Tiedemann and everything. Noah's obviously in this episode, there was a lot of that weird Noah voice again. So there was a lot of stuff going on that was really bad in this episode in terms of the dub, but there was nothing I either hadn't talked about before or because it's just consistently bad. So
yeah, well, I mean, we'll always have Tronte.
Yeah, we'll always have Tronte. I think that was a good way to. It was, put it this way, right? I felt like at the start of this, when we started this podcast, it was all going to be very Konrad heavy because you haven't seen it before, and I thought I needed something that was sort of my little segment. You know what I mean? But I don't feel like I need that anymore. So we'll do it again if I notice something because I will be watching it with the dub.
Yeah, we can bring it back as like an intermittent thing if you spot something great.
Exactly, and then that could be a moment like 6 episodes time. I finally spot something. It's like time for what the dub, and then all this is like or oh no, who knows?
Yeah.
But yeah, so that's gonna be the case. Okay, so if you want to leave a question for Konrad or myself, if you really want to, so if
leave a question for Anthony.
So there's a I'm gonna put a comment at the top of this video on YouTube. If you're listening to audio apps, you just go over to the YouTube channel, give it a subscribe, and if you just we want to ask a question to Konrad, it's going to be that pinned comment at the top. So that will be for episode 2 of season 2, and those questions are open until Thursday evening UK time. So if you want to get a question in, make sure it's before then. We record on a Thursday evening UK time, so just make sure. Apart from that, I think we're done for this. We're going to see you back on Saturday for the Q&A for this episode. Subscribe to podcasting apps, subscribe to the YouTube channel if you haven't already. Also make sure to thank the people in the comments if they managed to comment, the people who helped us get the microphones. Thank you very much to those people. Anyone else wants to give us a little tip, we wouldn't say no. It will all go back into the podcast. We need to get Konrad a webcam because we want to see his ugly mug. What do you think?
Yeah, think about how exciting that'll be to be disappointed in my in my appearance.
Yeah, exactly. But okay, so apart from that, goodbye.
Goodbye.
Thank you for listening to the After Dark podcast. Make sure you subscribe so you don't miss an episode.